Hey, welcome back everybody. It's me again, Navy vet turned futurist fanboy Augie Donnell, and today we're here to talk about close air support, or CAS.
What the?
And since it's me, there's probably more than a good chance we're going to talk about drones at least a little bit. But before we get to the future stuff, let's start a little further back. Wait, no, that's too far back. Good, yeah. If there's one innovation that has changed war since the creation of field artillery and the telephone, it would be the implementation of aircraft supporting infantry troops at close quarters. Introduced in World War I, CAS has been used to suppress the enemy as well as boost friendly morale, becoming an integral part of frontline infantry operations. But before we get to that, I want to shout out the folks who made this video possible, Conflict of Nations, a super fun, free online PvP strategy game. Which country would you want to lead if World War III broke out? In Conflict of Nations, that's exactly what you get to do. You can take control of an entire nation, managing everything from military spending to battle and attack strategies. Conflict of Nations uses a real-time tactical combat system that allows players to take command of a modern battlefield with matches and battles that last for weeks to enable grand strategies and detailed battle plans. And when it comes to the military assets at your fingertips, the game offers over 100 beautifully modeled modern weapon systems, like nuclear ballistic submarines, combat attack helicopters, stealth fighters, and much, much more. You can play with the same account on both PCs and mobile, and the gameplay is super smooth on either platform. Right now, Conflict of Nations has a special exclusive gift just for you. Just click on our link in the description to get 13,000 gold premium currency and 1 month of the premium account features for free. Throughout the lifetime of close air support, it's evolved from simple biplane platforms to the venerable A-10 Warthog, which is still in use, though its days certainly appear numbered. In these days, the application of handheld drones carrying munitions to be dropped on enemy trenches in close quarters has had a similarly significant impact, and it's possible that the next stage of CAS might involve, you guessed it, drones, more than manned aircraft. However, let's take some time to examine how far US close air support capabilities have come, from their start in World War I to modern conflicts and beyond. When the United States entered World War I in 1917, the war had already been raging in Europe. During this time, air assets were organized under the U.S. Army Aviation Section Signal Corps, which was responsible for supporting Army land operations. In addition to being late to the party, the U.S. had also failed to learn from their allies' mistakes, leading to a disorganization of air assets that were deemed ineffective during deployment. One of the contributing factors to this disorganization was the generally adversarial nature that Army leadership had with its aviators, mostly describing them as unmilitary or insubordinate. What? Aviators? No.
Every time you go up in the air, you're unsafe. I don't like you because you're dangerous.
That's right.
Overall, the shaky start to American air powers was because of the failure to address these institutional questions. 1. How should planes be used? 2. Who should control them? And 3. How will they interact with other military instruments? In a paper on the theoretical history and application through the ages of air support, Tammy Davis Biddle argues that activities such as aerial bombing can be considered coercive and that it's supposed to alter the behavior of the enemy. This was reinforced by Sir Hugh Trenchard. Wow, that's a World War I name if I ever heard one. He's the field commander for the British Army's Royal Flying Corps during World War I, known later as the father of the RAF. When used in an offensive capacity, air power has the ability to undermine an enemy's will to fight by placing pressure directly on the enemy population. Put simply, if an enemy's logistical assets, ammunition caches, and communication systems are destroyed, then the effects of those attacks will wear on the enemy heavily, eroding their will to fight. From the perspective of close air support, if a convoy is hit by an ambush in a valley, a gun run from an A-10 with accurate fire would be a good boon for friendly morale, while the sheer violence of the aerial attack might cause the enemy to be routed. Nobody in their right mind just stands around holding their bayonet with a Warthog bearing down on them, am I right? But number 2, who should control them? In World War II, Brigadier General William Billy Mitchell supported Trenchard's enthusiasm for air power. Through his aggressive personality, it was Mitchell who theorized and later had a hand in creating the United States Air Force, splitting it off from the Army after World War II. This split of assets from the Army to a specialized independent force meant that this new service had gained the ability to command its own assets, as well as determine its own role in a theater of operations, thus making it an equal player amongst land and sea-based forces. In terms of supporting ground forces during World War II, the Army Air Service would gain air superiority to to then make way for air-to-ground operations. In a way, because of air capability being tied to ground capability, supporting ground forces at close range fell as a priority, making way for air superiority and observation. As a result of the radical thinking of air service leadership, it was decided that long-range strategic strikes were a more efficient use of air assets than air-to-ground strikes. This was further reinforced by difficulty of communication between liaison officers on the ground and pilots in the air. In addition to disagreements of applied air doctrine, there was also a lack of consensus on what sort of aircraft to fulfill the CAS role, single versus multi-purpose aircraft. To try and solve this problem, it was the vision of General William Mitchell, amongst others, to separate the Army Air Service from being under a ground-specialized branch and into its own entity, therefore putting it on equal footing with both the Army and the Navy. How will they interact with other military instruments? When the Army and the Army Air Service separated after World War II, one of the big debates between the two branches were roles and responsibilities. While the Army and the Air Force had agreed to operate as a joint force to best utilize air capabilities for logistics, soldiers were deeply dissatisfied with how the Army Air Service provided close air support, or lack thereof. These issues remained well throughout World War II and even into the Korean War shortly after. To solve this issue, a sort of doctrine would need to be developed that encompassed both the Air Force's desire to utilize multi-role craft as well as the Army's desire for air power to support ground troops on demand. This doctrinal difference has led to a dovetailing of Army rotary air assets as well as Air Force fixed-wing assets, leading to today's battlefield containing a redundancy of mixed capabilities from both services. What evolved out of a shaky separation and an inter-service rivalry has created a cohesive, tightly knit, joint operational capability to best support troops on the ground, combining the extended command and control of Air Force long-range recon assets and the fast attack craft with the Army's capability to take and hold ground objectives. Today, the battlefield has evolved far past the bygone theaters of World War II. As technology evolved exponentially throughout the years, areas of operation have become increasingly complex, especially with the hybridization of warfare. In addition, the modern era has led to a surge of modernization throughout every military service, further expanding their mission sets and scopes. However, the basic doctrine of CAS has more or less remained the same, with an emphasis on communication between the air and the ground. After all, it's pretty important that a pilot be able to talk to the guys on the ground who are getting shot at before, flying in and dropping bombs in their general area. And to make sure that happens, modern tech made its way into wider use, known as digitally aided close air support. It allows elements involved in command and control, joint terminal air controllers, forward air controllers, AWACS, all of that, to more correctly identify the locations of friendlies, enemies, and the assets of both. This helps reduce the chances for human error for fire missions, as well as provide real-time data to those on the ground and in the air. The maturation of this technology and its integration into CAS doctrine allows commanders to make decisions with as much information as possible, giving them an edge over their less advanced adversaries. In other words, the more the close air support was used, the better people got at using it, until it was downright deadly to the enemy and a lifesaver for friendly ground troops. This was put on display during the global war on terror era of US conflict with deployments to the Middle East. Here, CAS consisted of the deployment of not only gun runs, but accurate bombing runs from multi-role and strike fighter aircraft. In 2011, the Air Force provided support during Operation Hammer Down II, a combined operation that resulted in the disruption of insurgent training activity in the Peach Valley in Afghanistan. During this operation, both the 389th and 555th Expeditionary Fighter Squadrons worked with the Army's 3rd Brigade Combat Team. The communication skills of embedded JTACs and airborne pilots was on full display as danger close ordnance was being dropped to suppress enemy positions without endangering friendly forces. In all 176 hours flown and more than 100 bombs dropped during the operation, coalition forces only suffered 4 killed in action and 18 wounded, a number that could have been way higher had there been no air assets to support the fight. While the conflict in the Middle East did provide valuable lessons, such as the integration of technology into the CAS decision chain, those lessons would eventually be put to the test with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. For this conflict, a theoretical overmatched Ukraine was invaded by Russia, who used a hybrid approach, combining conventional war methods as well as cyber warfare to initially take Ukrainian territory and further into Crimea. While Ukraine was able to draw NATO assets in the form of surface-to-air missiles in an attempt to suppress Russian helicopter gunships and other air assets, most of their success has been seen in the form of modified drones. Ukrainian ground forces have been able to supplement their ground attack capabilities without having to rely on the deployment of air assets like the F-16. While this isn't to say that the Ukrainian Air Force is not using air assets for ground support, the unmanned drone has stolen the headlines as a quick-to-deploy frontline tool that can provide intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, as well as on-demand delivery of munitions on Russian positions. Throughout the Russia-Ukraine war, drones have become a force multiplier in a battle space rife with air defense assets for both sides, and this has allowed the Ukrainians to become flexible without risking valuable aircraft. One of the most used drones is the first-person view, FPV, which can be built cheaply, with some units costing as little as $500, and be coupled with munitions on hand to drop them directly on enemy positions or act as fast suicide drones. Depending on the size of the drone, battery, distance to target, and size of the payload, these drones can have an effective range between 5 to 20 kilometers. Drone teams would then coordinate with each other as well as troops on the ground to effectively apply the payload. While drones have been used as far back as World War I, but really became well known in the 2000s, the Russia-Ukraine war can be considered the first time the world has seen such widespread usage of this technology. One misunderstanding about the use of drones as a form of CAS is that it was never meant to act as a replacement for tools such as artillery or dedicated strike aircraft, but as an augment. While artillery and aircraft-delivered ordnance have a larger area of effect, drones are very good at tracking moving targets as well as keeping the enemy holed up in their positions, thanks to the sheer number of them, paralyzing enemy movement. In addition, the psychological effect of a drone overhead can strike fear into soldiers on both sides. Throughout the years and multiple conflicts, close air support technologies have evolved, leading to the development of laser-guided bombs and guided missiles. However, these weapons are deployed from dedicated air assets. While vital for reinforcing troops in contact, the logistics and maintenance requirements necessary to keep planes in the air are extremely expensive. Thus, in parallel, artillery capabilities have also developed to support troops on the ground. Companies such as Raytheon have developed artillery munitions that can be precisely guided onto their targets, just like air-deployed assets. The Raytheon Excalibur is a 155mm howitzer-launched projectile that operates on a GPS-aided fire-and-forget system, allowing artillery operators to accurately hit targets within 25 miles from their position. Development on the projectile began in 1986, with the Excalibur seeing use throughout modern engagements beginning in 2007. Boasting over 1,500 rounds fired in combat, the use of precision-guided artillery systems costs less to operate than even the cheapest fighter the US has available. A $100,000 cost for a single-use asset, the shell, versus the upkeep of an F-16, which has an operating cost of around $5.5 million a year as of 2020. While both systems serve the same purpose of fire support, it could be argued that a single-use asset is vastly cheaper than something with ongoing maintenance and parts costs. The comparison of costs will be seen today, seeing as how Ukraine will be fielding both systems in the war against Russia. Outside of cost, the Excalibur round also has the advantage of being an all-weather applicable weapon. One variant of the round, the Excalibur HTK, utilizes an all-weather seeker to further guide the round towards its intended target. The distinct advantage of a system like this versus the use of a plane will be that it can be used completely independent of weather conditions, whereas deployment of any air asset, fixed or rotary, can be canceled if the weather becomes too bad for safe operation. While it sounds like replacing CAS with artillery can solve cost and conditional issues, there have been some reports that the Excalibur has stumbled against Russian jamming and electronic warfare countermeasures. With the round being GPS guided, if jammed, there is a very real possibility that the round can miss and cause collateral damage, something that anyone would want to avoid. When conditions are perfect, the round is perfect, with an asterisk here because it's artillery and but it is able to hit a target with minimal damage to surrounding areas. However, a misused payload like this will have very real consequences, especially in a dense urban area. Raytheon has attempted to work around this with the HTK variant of the round, which, as I was saying earlier, uses an additional seeker to locate imprecisely located targets, as well as developing a laser-guided projectile, which helps reduce the risk of GPS jamming. It's not a perfect solution, but if the rounds are switched, it still allows their use. This imperfection is where CAS application can close the gap, as on-site station pilots can actively communicate with forces on the ground regarding how best to support them. While GPS and laser-guided weapons are a boon to getting accurate hits on target, nothing can beat a pilot and the ground team being able to make situationally informed decisions together on the fly, versus having to walk artillery on target. With every new battle or war, technologies, tactics, and doctrine will always evolve. What began in World War I as a tool for reconnaissance, surveillance, communication, and artillery spotting has been combined with newly developed technology to become a terrifying force multiplier. This has also led to a literal and metaphorical arms race between opposing nations to outmatch each other. When CAS came to the forefront of public attention, the United States Air Force was employing aircraft such as the A-10 Warthog, AC-130, and Predator drone to great effect. Now, present day, we're seeing the foundations of close air support doctrine formed in World War I and World War II evolve into the deployment of small unmanned FPV drones used to deliver explosive payloads on demand. Whereas CAS capability used to be very cost prohibitive for many nations, the average infantryman is now able to put together a close air support asset for less than the cost of a PlayStation 2, or whatever PlayStation is out right now. When initially applied, the main questions for air support were, how do we use it, and who owns it? Also, who are all these guys with cool jackets and mustaches, and why are they so unmilitary and insubordinate? In future battles, the question will then become, how can we change it to best suit our needs? And also, who are these guys slamming energy drinks and rocking hoodies over the flank jackets as they assemble suicide drones to attach at the enemy? Anti-air weapons have been further developed to take down strike fighters in both Russian and Ukrainian ground forces. And both Russian and Ukrainian ground forces have developed ways to jam drone signals, limiting their effectiveness in some situations. The development of smart artillery shells challenges the role of CAS aircraft specifically, leading some leaders to question CAS's effectiveness, when the operational cost of a howitzer is much lower than a fighter or bomber. Such developments can make tech such as planes or drones obsolete, especially in a jammed environment that can obfuscate vital radio signals used for guidance systems. And even as new systems, such as these recently utilized FPV drones, are being rendered obsolete depending on the situation. The application of aging platforms, such as the A-10 Thunderbolt, produced by the long-defunct Fairchild Republic, becomes questionable, especially as maintenance costs rise. Sooner or later, dedicated close air support craft will have to be retired, as some of those airframes have been in use since the Gulf War in the 90s. In the future, vital parts, additively manufactured or procured otherwise, will be more expensive to produce. On a small scale, the US Air Force has bought shipments of a propeller-powered airframe known as the OA-1K Skyraider II to attempt to fill that hole that will be left by the A-10. However, the Skyraider will only be used for special operations. The reasoning behind this could be rising costs for aviation needs, as well as the US military's desire for modularity in all of its systems. See both the pistol and the rifle programs that were most recently adopted by the Army. That's probably not meant to be read out loud. But this quest to do more with less is a double-edged sword. While it can be agreed that general costs are spiraling out of control for virtually everything, this problem especially rears its head within the military and its budgeting practice of spend it or lose it. It can be argued that funds, personnel, and equipment have been stretched thin for far longer than they should have. The dependence on aging tech will be difficult to sustain, while modern warfare will be prohibitively expensive to obtain. For the foreseeable future, it'll be interesting to see how close air support will adapt to shifting perspectives, battlefields, and competing technologies. That's it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to check out Conflict of Nations, the free online PvP strategy game, giving away an exclusive gift to all of you. Just click the link in the description to get 13,000 gold and 1 month of their premium account for free.